Hi guys, hope wherever you are and whatever you've been doing, you've had a super sensational day. Tonight we're sharing 5 inclusive ideas for the traditional Easter egg hunt, and we're joined by our very special guest, Kirsty Russell. She's a founder of Positive Special Needs Parenting, and Kirsty is a parent to 2 children with additional needs: autism, albinism, anxiety, sensory processing disorder, and vision impairment. So it's a bit of a tongue twister. Kirsty will be sharing several strategies you can put in place to make it a fun event for everyone and to ensure that there are no tears, no complaints, no upsets, and no injuries. I love that, no injuries. Now, hands up, really, who's seen Easter eggs in the supermarket and hot cross buns since Boxing Day? Unbelievable. Commercialism at its finest. You know, it's crazy to think the build-up for Easter is almost as long as a build-up for Christmas. It really is that long. But, you know, now Easter's only a few days away, and it's one of the most anticipated long weekends in our annual calendar. Despite that we've got the public holiday on the Friday, we generally leave the Easter egg hunt planning to the last minute, and that's, of course, because we're all busy and we're tired. But it's not too early to start planning this like traditional Easter egg hunt. Perfect opportunity to create all those lasting memories with the kids as they run around with their chocolate and their baskets and everything else. And in Easter Sunday is that one day of the year that we can start and finish the day with chocolate, which I think everybody loves. But while the traditional Easter egg hunt is fun for most kids, it's not always enjoyable experience for every child. You know, for younger children, the Easter egg hunt can be disappointing as they miss out on getting their fair share of eggs, as older kids and faster kids run around and they scoop up the loot. And for children with disabilities or additional needs, an Easter egg hunt may not be accessible to all, leaving them feeling isolated, upset, and left out. You know, some children may not be able to join in the search due to mobility issues, sensory sensitivities, or find their poor vision disadvantages them from taking part. You know, it's important to plan an Easter egg hunt that takes into account the abilities of all children, so every child can get their fair share and join in with all the fun. Luckily, it's not that difficult to plan a truly inclusive Easter egg hunt to benefit everyone. And lucky tonight we're joined by Kirsty, who's going to show us how. How you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you, Rachel?
Good. I'm really excited to be chatting with you tonight. Now, for everybody watching, Kirsty is a positive special needs parent, and she's dedicated to helping fellow parents find positivity and empowerment, even in the most difficult of moments. Now, for somebody that hasn't maybe had an introduction to you and your story, can you give us a little bit of an overview, what sort of prompted you to start Positive Special Needs Parenting? And we'd just love to know a little bit of your backstory.
Yep. Well, I started the blog, and it was a personal blog, so it's emerged sort of over time, back in 2011. And I started it because I was going back to work after my 3rd child. So I actually have 3. I have two kids with special needs, and my youngest doesn't. And I just needed an outlet to, I suppose, talk about sort of my experiences and to just process a lot of the stuff that I was going through. And as I started that, we went on the journey. My son had already received most of his diagnoses by that stage. But my daughter, as I blogged, my daughter received her autism diagnosis and her sensory processing and anxiety diagnoses. So yeah, it was actually therapy for me in the beginning to do that. And then as I connected with more and more people, I realised that there was probably a need to share more of the story, but also to share information and resources to help other parents as well. Because as I went along, it's difficult to find the positives, and it's hard, particularly when, you know, most of the time we're having to be fixated on the negatives, you know, to get funding, to get support, to get a diagnosis in the first place. So, my driver is to show parents that, you know, a diagnosis isn't a tragedy, it isn't the end of the world, and to try and find proactive ways so we can help our kids. They get a better future, and they can actually, you know, we can maximise their strengths and harness some of their potential.
Yeah, it's an incredible community that you've built, and no doubt there's thousands of families that you've helped along the way and will continue to help as well in the future. So, you know, hats off to you. And for everybody watching, we've published an article of Kirsty's recently called 5 Inclusive Ideas for the traditional Easter egg hunt. For someone that hasn't maybe read the article, can you give us a little bit of an overview on why you wrote it, and yes, a little bit of background information on it?
Yeah, I wrote an original version of the article a few years back because I'd gone to a community Easter egg hunt with my daughters, and just watching how it unfolded. And, you know, my youngest daughter was upset because she was small. She was only sort of 3 or 4 at the time, and so she missed out on the eggs she wanted. And my older daughter, because she has her diagnoses, didn't have the confidence to go and doesn't like being, you know, too close to people. And so both of them sort of felt, you know, hard done by, I guess, by the end of it. And when I sat down and thought about it, and I thought about the issues they faced, I started thinking about the ways that we could actually make it more inclusive. So, you know, it may not be something that we can necessarily always do in those bigger ones, but something I'd love, you know, organised Easter egg hunts to look at. That it's certainly something we can start at home, and something to, you know, so that our kids, regardless of age or ability, diagnosis, you know, whatever the case may be, that they all have a fair go, and then it's fun. And yeah, we don't have injuries, because we saw a few kids clash heads that day, and you just don't need that.
Wow. Jeez. And, you know, as we're talking offline before as well, these points, and we're going to be discussing in a moment, really can be used for almost any Easter egg hunt, because with a lot of families, you'll be out in the front yard, or in parks, or with families, friends, neighbours, and of course, it's very rare that all kids are going to be the same age. It's going to be varying different ages. So this is, I guess, for all parents to take into consideration, and how we can actually sort of manage, I guess, and ensuring that the children are going to have the best experience and memorable experience for everyone, and making it inclusive. Would you say that's sort of, I guess, the notion of the article?
Definitely, because I think there's just little things you can do that will actually make it a better experience for everyone. And none of us, I know I've done this many times, gone out with the kids, you know, and everyone's been excited and wanting a good time, and then something happens to derail it, and they're upset, and instead of having all the happiness, you've just got all the tears and the tantrums. So just little things can be done that will actually make it a really positive experience for everyone. And I guess, you know, having, you know, being the parent of kids with additional needs, and seeing that sometimes they struggle with things, sometimes just a little tweak or just something small can make all the difference for them. And that's, you know, what I'd like to be able to share and get people to think about, basically.
That's beautiful. Well, let's get stuck into the 3 key questions. Now, question number 1, you know, what should an inclusive Easter egg hunt look like? You know, in your article, you shared 5 ideas. Can you maybe just go through those with us? We'd love to.
Yeah, so the first idea was basically to focus on accessibility, and what I mean by that is to sort of consider all the kids that will be coming along, and thinking about sort of their different abilities. So if you've got kids who are smaller, sort of consider sort of how, you know, you hide eggs so you don't make it too hard for them. If you've got older kids, it might be sort of making it a bit more of a challenge. They're not bored, you know, that accessibility can take into account that as well. But also more so if there are kids who are coming along that, you know, say for example, my son has a vision impairment, so it's not easy for him to participate in an Easter egg hunt. So we sort of have to guide him, or at least make sure that his eggs are a bit easier for him to find. So it's just having a think about sort of that. So and to make it in a way that every child can independently participate. So if you've got kids, for instance, who may be wheelchair users, it's obviously thinking about where you're going to hold it, making sure they can independently get around and look for things as well. So it's just really, in the end, looking at it from the child's perspective. How can we make this so that they can independently find these eggs, have fun, but in the end, you know, challenge the older ones, but also make it easy enough for those, you know, to make it accessible for all. So it's just getting down on their level, really, and thinking, okay, if I was in their shoes, you know, what could I do? And that's all it takes. It's just really thinking, you know, putting yourself into the other person's perspective.
Yeah, you mentioned under this point that, which I think is a brilliant idea, is in a clearly defined and like a level area. So having different areas for the hunt for different children, maybe. I think that's a brilliant idea. Yeah, and also use high contrast colours, textures, and sounds, in particular for children with like vision impairment, which I think there's lots of different things that you can do. But as you said, you know, sort of having the empathy to be able to sit there and see this experience through their eyes, and how you can make it quite memorable and enjoyable.
Well, that's it. And I think one of the other ones we've used really successfully, and we've got the 3 kids, is to use a different colour. Um, so if you say to the kids, okay, you pick all the green eggs, you pick all the pink ones, you pick all the blue ones, and then you make sure obviously you put out enough of each one, then they're all going to, it's going to be equal and fair. But you can also set it, so last year we did it with my son, and his eggs we sort of made a little bit easier to find, but the girls knew not to take them because they weren't the colour they've been designated. So that's another really good one. Like, it can get more complicated when you've got more kids in play, but if you've only got sort of 3, 4, 5 kids, that can actually be something that's really really simple and easy to do, and actually can immediately sort of make it accessible for all the kids. But the other one, another suggestion I've got there too, is to have a scavenger hunt. And that's really, if an Easter egg hunt isn't really what you want to do, maybe you can do clues, and maybe, you find that, the end point isn't an egg, it might be something else, or it might be edge shapes or whatever. But that's another one that can be used, because then you can read out, clues if children, have vision issues. Obviously, you can have them to be read. So if you've got kids with a hearing impairment, they can read it. So you can actually still make it quite inclusive by taking that approach as well. And it's something a little bit different and exciting as well.
Yeah.
And the last thing too is, if you've got kids, and there's so many these days that have allergies or intolerances to things, think about and make sure that you sort of understand if you've got to take them into account too, so that you might need to have, dairy-free eggs or some, other substitutes sort of to chocolate. And then that way they don't miss out either, and I know that I've got a few family members with diabetes. They've got to be really careful with obviously their sugar intake. So things like that, it just makes it just a little bit, it means the world to kids, I think, when you take the time to think about it from their point of view.
100%. So the other point, you've got an article, as you said before, is marking out the search areas, so maybe having different areas for different kids, different levels, and then providing an alternative to chocolate as well, which is always a great option, as you said, through the scavenger hunt. So they're awesome ideas. Well, question number 2, have your kids struggled with Easter egg hunts in the past, and if so, how?
Well, look, I mentioned that one earlier. So we had the community hunt. Now, my son didn't go along to that one. It was probably a good thing, because I think he would have really, really struggled with that one. But yeah, my daughters are lovely. They don't like sort of, pushing and pulling with other people, but it was a madhouse. And I think a lot of these public, ones are. The kids just get right into it. And yeah, you come away and you just, the kids are deflated, and you feel really bad for them too, because, I went around and I tried to find a bit of chocolate here and there, but I didn't want to take that from other kids. So you don't want to be that parent that steals from other kids either. So it's sort of, and, so that's hard. But even at home, in the early days when we didn't actually mark out designated colours, the girls would find them and my son would miss out. So I just think it's just thinking about it in those terms, and they're just little things, and they've made such a difference to us and to our kids' experience. So I really hope that they can help other families as well.
So, I mean, how have you, since you've had those experiences, then sort of, maybe sort of prepared for other ones, or prepared the children or yourself, or do you then not go to community Easter egg hunts? Like, how have you changed that since you've had those experiences?
Well, look, we haven't been to a community one since then. It wasn't necessarily that experience. It's just been, it just hasn't sort of worked for us. But I would be wary of it again, only because, it's a free for all. And I think when, kids and chocolate and it just turns them into, animals, like running around and trying to get that. But it did make us think, and it really made me consciously think about, okay, well, if we did have, and we've had parties here, like birthday parties, same sort of process. To work through for that, to help with accessibility. We've had mobility sort of impaired kids come along too, and it really does make you think to go, okay, well, how can I set up where the party is, or I set up the search zone to make it easy and accessible, and for them to independently, because that's the thing, you don't want to be the one, I'll go and find the eggs for you. They want to be a part of it, and true inclusion is allowing them and giving them the ability to take part in their own way. So I really think that that's really keeping that at the top of the mind, helps. But certainly I think having some not so good experiences, and in a way sort of helped me realise and discover, okay, here's some better ways we could do that.
Yeah. And in your experience also, there's, you're sharing an Easter egg hunt with other families, maybe not so much in the community one, but other people as well, maybe other families that, you know, possibly you haven't met before, and those types of things as well. Have you, in your experience, or would you suggest that parents actually, how would you suggest that they maybe communicate to other families about, you know, about your children and how they should go about it, really?
Well, I think hopefully if you've got a good relationship with family, like we did this a few years ago, we went down to Wagga and we did an Easter egg hunt in the botanical gardens there. And there was this one little sheltered bit that had a bridge, and it was great. And so we just basically set up eggs there, and the kids had a go. But, you know, we understand as family, you know, as I said, we've got a family member with diabetes. We've got a few on the spectrum. My husband and I, for instance, are celiac, so we've got to be careful with sort of the chocolate and what we have ourselves. So it's just really being honest. And I think you know, if you're doing it with friends and stuff, it is sort of sitting down and going, okay, maybe doing some, you know, just some broad ground rules like that. Maybe understanding if one family doesn't want chocolate as much for their kids, sort of, you know, respect that. And there's other ways you can do a hunt that doesn't involve chocolate. But I think it's really just having that open communication and just, you know, suggesting, hey, let's do it this way. Let's give them all a colour. Or, hey, let's stagger things. Let the little ones go first, you know, give them a few minute head start, and then have the big ones go after them. So it's really just thinking about, I think in the end it's ways, how can we have the day end on a positive note and not on sort of, you know, that negative note of disappointment.
Well, on that, I mean, how have you sort of managed the expectations of the children also? Is there anything in particular you say to them in preparation?
Yeah, look, as I said, changing the colours and stuff has helped. So we've been able to say to them, hey, you know, you look for this colour. So they know they might find another egg, but if it's not their colour, they will leave it there. So that's been a good option for us. But really, it's sort of trying to tell them that it's not the be all and end all. And I suppose managing expectations, particularly for kids on the spectrum, is really important. But I think for all children it is. And I think it's also just trying to get them to be kind. So, you know, if they've got, you know, if they look in their basket and they've got a ton more than their little sister or brother, it's sort of, you know, having a chat and going, maybe we could share these around, or, you know, or you'll get really, really sick if you eat all those, or whatever, you know, whatever the case may be. But yeah, it's trying to, I think it's trying to grow up and teach empathy, really, sort of to get our kids to understand and to think about others. And I think this is a really good exercise where, you know, we can start leading by example within ourselves, you know, and using that as a tool, to teach our kids too.
Hallelujah. 100%. 100%. Well, let's get on to question number 3. You know, what's your top tip for organising a truly inclusive Easter egg hunt?
I think the top tip, and I sort of referred to this at the start, is really just thinking, taking the point of view of the child. So, you mean, and each of them. So if you've got a little kid, okay, how can we make this, you know, good for them? And it's really, because every situation's going to be different, every child has different needs. But the first step really is going, okay, how can we make this, you know, how can we meet their expectations? How can we make this a fun time? And then looking at sort of the way that you can set that up, then you can give them broad rules and expectations, you know, to say, okay, if you're going to go for these colours, or we're just going to let the little ones go off first for the first couple of minutes, they can have a go. You know,
That's
it's really, and that's worked too. We've used that as well. So I think it's just, in the end, that broad rule is just, you know, put yourself in the shoes of the child, of each child, and think about what will make things easier for them, because everyone has their own individual needs. And a lot of these things, even though I've written it from the point of view, you know, of disability or special needs parenting, actually can apply to any child at any age, really.
Yeah, as we were saying before, it's about sort of parenting with as much empathy as possible and seeing it through their eyes and understanding, you know, sort of foreseeing sort of what obstacles and challenges there's going to be, and ensuring that you've actually got something in place to counteract that and make sure it's the most enjoyable experience ever, really. Is there any...
That's the plan.
Yeah. So, and so I guess for this year, I mean, up until what age were you sort of doing Easter egg hunts for your children then?
As long as they want them, you know, they can be adults and I'll still do them. I don't care. It's whatever, you know, it's as long as it interests them and it's something that brings them joy. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. And the only other question I had, I guess, for your child that's got the vision impairment, have you run any Easter egg hunts with sounds? I think you mentioned that within the article. if you have, like, what have you done in particular?
I think we tried that once when he was younger. He wasn't a huge fan. He's actually got enough functional vision that he can get up close enough. But mind you, he's got to basically put his face in the bush, but he can sort of find things. But yeah, look, tying, well, you can get things like the link bunnies these days and stuff, have little bells on them.
Yeah, the little bell one, yeah.
Yeah, so things like a little bell, which can help so that, you know, and you could even put a bell on sort of the plant near it is. I mean, if they get near it and ding it, well, then that might, you know, get them to go, okay, there might be something here for us to look at. But yeah, that's probably the way that we've done it in the past. Yeah, so there's probably different things. You could actually put in the faux, you know, the little plastic egg things, and you could put a shaker thing in that, you know, that might also be another clue. But I think it'd be trial and error for what will work, because, as I said, my son's got on the spectrum as well, so sometimes sounds can annoy him. So that was the issue we had. Like, we thought the bell was a great idea for his vision, but unfortunately it annoyed him, you know, and it didn't sort of help him in that way. So yeah, but I think there's a lot of different things. And as I said, it's suggested textures. So it might be that, you know, if someone is nearly, you know, completely blind, etc., it can be sort of more a tactile experience where, you know, it might be, instead of hiding things too much, they can be put to an area and actually, you know, feel the differences to find them. So there's all different ways that it can be, you know, that you can do it, and it will obviously depend on the needs of the particular child.
Yeah. We published our Easter egg guide, or our Easter guide, earlier on in the week, and that's got a whole heap of different ideas for Easter egg hunts, and even you know, for some children also, you can with those lights, the eggs you're talking about before, you can put lights in them as well and do sort of one.
Yeah.
You know, there's a whole heap of sort of exciting and fun ideas as well. But you've given us some really, really thoughtful and insightful information tonight. And if parents have got any other questions for you, and or in the future they want to find you, where can they find you?
Yeah. Probably the best place is the Positive Special Needs Parenting, and I know it's a mouthful. Positive Special Needs Parenting.
Sorry, I couldn't get it out before.
Yeah, so that's on Facebook. They can also, the website's the same name, positivespecialneedsparenting.com.
Yeah.
And they're probably the two best places to sort of find me. I sort of occasionally on Instagram when I remember, and I'm also on Twitter for anyone who likes Twitter. But yeah, essentially Facebook and I live on Facebook basically. So
yeah, and you've got that beautiful community of families and that sort of stuff there as well.
Yeah.
And otherwise you can obviously find Kirsty through the Kittypedia website as well. So thanks so much for your time tonight. Have a beautiful Easter. Give my love to the kids, and can't wait to speak to you again soon.
Yeah, will do. Thanks so much.
All right, take care. All right, bye.
Bye.